Hello again. Welcome back to My Barbies Carry Knives, and today I'm going to show you how to build a paper printed model in 1/6 scale. I'm going to start with a standalone model which is for a basic trail bike, and this comes free on My Barbies Carry Knives Facebook page. You can also find it on the 1/6 free printable models Facebook group, and well worth a look, because there's not just my stuff there, but also a lot of other like-minded people have posted their own printable models as well. Now the model comes as 3 sheets of paper. This one is the frame for the trail bike. This one is the seat and the forks for the front wheel of the trail bike, and this one here is for the wheels. Now I start almost all of my models by gluing the paper, which I cut into smaller sections. As an example, this is the top of the trail bike. That's the front and back of the forks. There's the seat and the front and back of the trail bike. So we have almost all of the pieces, not quite all as it turns out, but that's okay because I can always cut one out. And here we are. This is the bottom of the frame, and all I'm going to do is simply snip it out quite roughly, leaving plenty around the edges, and I can now glue that onto some thicker card so that it will become stiffened, and I can use it to build the model, which will be a fairly substantial and hardy model by the time we're finished. Now, cardboard. I was taught to recycle at a very young age, but the recycling I was taught was to reuse rather than to take things back to be pulped. Along the way I've discovered that a lot of cardboard comes in through my door, and if I can use it as a model building material, I save myself a lot of money. The best pasteboard for making models like this is something like a cereal packet, although you can use the slightly thinner food packaging like this. Thicker pasteboard can be found on the back of envelopes and at the back of pads, and of course you can use corrugated cardboard. The only drawback of cardboard is that it can warp, and usually does, but that's nothing that you can't solve by putting the card between 2 books and flattening it out again. So to give you an example of how I would go about gluing pieces together, here we have the front and back of the frame, and I'm just going to put a little bit of, this is cheap pound shop glue because it's nice and thin and runny. A little bit of that, doesn't take a lot. Use a brush to spread it around so that it's going to cover at least the area of the cardboard that you are going to put your paper on. Put the paper on top, start at the middle and smooth out. And it really is that simple. And you can let that dry. There you go, all around the edges, nice and safe. And you can let that dry whilst you glue other pieces on and start to build up the pieces for your model. Now, in the fine traditions of the craft show and the television programme, I've got one here that I've prepared earlier. This one, slightly thicker pasteboard, lots of glue, and as you can see, it has actually warped a little bit. But that's not a problem because we're going to do something with this which will straighten it out and reinforce it. So, trim away excess cardboard. The reason why I do that is so that I can use that again another day. I can then cut away separate parts. Those are for the hinge at the front of the bike, so that the bike wheel will move from side to side. And I'll show you in a later program how those will fit together. In the meantime, I'll show you, just cut out a couple of these and glue them together to show how we can strengthen different parts of our model. Again, the cutting out at this stage fairly loose, so I'm not worrying about being too close to the edges at this stage, because now I've got something manageable to work with. I can cut right to the edge. There we go. All the little pieces can then go in the bin afterwards. It's fair, it's simple enough. There we go. And as you can see, although the paper warped, it's not that noticeable on the small piece that it has done so. I can now cut that away. There we go. Now that's half of one fork cut out. I'm going to cut the other half out, and we're going to reinforce it with a coffee stick, courtesy of one of the big brands of burgers, big burger chain. Very nice of them, thank you very much. Now I'm going to want to have a hole in there for the axle of the front wheel, so I'm going to use a hole punch to simply punch a hole in that end. That gives you a nice clean hole. I'm going to punch through the top end, same where the handlebars will go, and that's that piece ready. Now for the second piece. There you go. That's that bit done. I probably should explain more about what I'm doing. While I'm doing this, I can actually talk about the advantages of paper models. There are many things you can do with paper models, particularly in large scales, that perhaps you wouldn't want to do with your bought models. If you want to do low relief, for example, you can simply cut your cardboard model in half. If you're going out and spending a lot of money on a plastic model, I'm sure you don't want to take a hacksaw to it once you've bought it. So keep the nice plastic model in one piece and then use your paper model for your low relief. And it's the same with Rex as well. Now I want this to run from that hole to that hole, which is about there. Pair of scissors, cuts that to size. I can now glue this on the back, so we'll start to put together our fork. Now, this isn't cheap glue, this is your tacky PVA, this is Anita's tacky PVA. There are other brands around. The advantage of this is that it's thicker, it's got more of what they call grab, and you can get a nice good covering on there like so. Very easy to use, completely non-toxic. Put that between those two holes. There you go. Nice and firm. Hold it for a few seconds and it will actually have started to take. I can now do the opposite on that side. There you go. Put that on there, that on there. Line up the holes at one end using eyeball number 1. Line up the holes at the other end. And we now have the basis of our forks as one side, and if you imagine that this is the on your bike model, so your forks start to form a nice box at the top which is nice and strong, and then you've got the strengthened fork at the bottom. Between the two, in between those, the wheel will go. So let that glue, put that to one side, let it glue. In the meantime, I can start working on the wheels. Now, the wheels are a bit more of a complex construction because you have curves. You can use curves in paper modelling, cardboard modelling, but you do have to practice a little bit before it'll become nice and smooth. Now, the wheels are composed of 2 sides and the edge. Now this I have mounted on some food packaging cardboard, nice and thin, and that will hold its shape once I've put it round the outside. But to get these the right distance apart and the right shape, I'm going to put a cardboard spacer in between the 2 sides, like so. How do you measure the distance? I'm not going to tell you the distance on the model because I don't know what size of cardboard you're going to use. What I do know is that when you put those 2 together and put them at the back of that tyre flat, that will give you the distance that they need to be apart, which you can then measure and cut out in cardboard. It's then simply a matter of cutting simply by eye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces to go around the edge of your wheel. And then a little bit of glue on the edge. There we go. Right up to the edge. Use your finger as a guide. Okay? And because it's tacky glue, you'll see that it stays upright. It's got a good hold. If you don't think that it's straight enough, get your scissors out. Just straighten it up a little. Some seconds work saves you a lot of grief from later on. Put that opposite. And there. And carry on round until you've got all 6 in, evenly spaced. Don't have to be mathematically precise because of course these are going to be hidden inside your wheel. You'll probably wonder why I look at them so intently when I pick them up. What I'm doing is I'm checking which side is closest to a right angle. As I'm doing it by eye, it won't be perfect, but I'm pretty sure I can tell which is the most square end and use that, and it's good enough for the project that I'm doing here. There we go. one more. So that one, not sure about that end, so get the scissors out, trim it off nice and square. I seem to have noisy neighbours today, sorry about that. Anyway, there you are. Those are all in position. Now I have to let those dry. And again, just like Blue Peter, here's one I prepared earlier. You'll see that those now form the basis on which I can glue the other half of the wheel. And it's already looking a lot more wheel-like and a lot less like some card that you've just thrown together. So again, tacky glue on the edges there. There you go. Glue on all of those, that should give it a nice strong fix. You've got your, just line up those bits with the edge, line up those with the edge, press them all together, press it all down. Now I'm going to have to hold that whilst it glues into a nice secure shape. In fact, the other thing I can do, of course, is that. That is enough pressure to make that a nice fix. And the glue is strong enough that it won't just collapse to one side. At least I hope it won't. It'd be rather embarrassing if it did. While I'm talking about that, I'll talk about some of the other pieces. These are the sides of the frame, and again, we have positions for holes, which I will just punch out. Okay, so that's one for the back axle, and one there. That's where the pedal and footrests are going to go. You'll notice that these are corrugated cardboard, quite thin corrugated cardboard, but it gives it a bit of strength, and as you can see, not warped that much, nice and straight, and once the top and the underside is on, won't be that noticeable. The other thing you can do, of course, once it's assembled, you can paint over the edges with a bit of green paint, so it all blends in, gives you a nice even finish. So while I'm about it, I will punch a hole through this. And there we go, through there. And just to prove that I know what size holes it is, this is a standard skewer. I'll go through there quite comfortably, and if I want to stiffen it up, of course, I can wrap some paper around it and paint that and thicken it up so that we've got something thicker for your action figure, action man, Barbie can actually hold on to whilst driving. Let's see how this is fixing now. Is that holding? Okay, so that's pretty much together, not quite, not 100%, but it's close enough that I can demonstrate the next piece, because to finish the wheel, what you're going to do is you're going to take this and wrap it around the edges. Now, on the print, there is one bit which is a little bit blank, and with the rest of it, the tread goes right to the end. And the reason for that is because this overlaps, because it gives you a stronger finish. So that bit is the bit that you want to glue on first. And what you'll do is you'll glue that on there, and then you'll work your way around, all the way around, until you've got the whole thing covered, and then it overlaps, and that is the wheel of your trail bike. That would go there for the back wheel, and of course there for the front wheel. Now obviously in the short time we have, I can't show you everything because of trying times and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call an end to this tutorial there and pick it up next time, when some of these pieces will be fully glued and dried, finished and ready to put together. Thank you very much. I hope this has helped you understand what the paper models are meant to do, how they're supposed to work, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.